My parents didn't even realize I had moved to a different state, but now suddenly my dad is calling and demanding that I come visit them or else he'll cut off my college funding. So I told him the truth. Well, not quite. I told him I already graduated a year ago and now make 10 times his income. Growing up, I was always the one my dad looked down on. He was completely obsessed with my brother. He even said, "I don't care if you got accepted into some top-tier college, you're going to the local one because we don't want your brother getting jealous." So I played along. I said, "Sure, Dad, I'll go to the local college, but I want to stay in the dorms." What he didn't know was that I lied. I acted like I was living on campus at the local school, but really, I was attending the prestigious college on a scholarship he had no idea about. And when he finds out, he's going to lose it. What would you do if the people who ignored you for years suddenly expected you to show up and pretend to be part of a loving family for a day? That's a tricky situation, right? But that's just how it goes with my family. Especially my family. Let me take you back to the beginning. I'm Jonas, and in case you haven't picked up on it, my family is seriously messed up. Actually, I'm not even sure it counts as a family. I mean, what do you call the people who brought you into this world only to treat you like you don't exist once they found someone better? Is that really a family? I'm not going to dance around it. I could have had a decent childhood if my parents had just treated both of us the same. But nope, my parents were unapologetically biased. I was nothing more than background noise, simply because my brother Roman was the healthier one. Roman was the kind of baby that everyone adored right away, chubby, cute, smiley. While I was just the scrawny, ordinary-looking kid no one paid much attention to. But should that really matter to a parent? You wouldn't think so, but with my parents, Patrick and Marin, it absolutely did. The second Roman was born, he became their everything, the golden child. He wasn't even exceptional, he just looked better. You know the type people call the main character? That was Roman. Me? I was always just there. The invisible sidekick. So yeah, you can probably guess how awful my childhood was. My parents ignored me completely, providing only the bare minimum, while my arrogant brother basked in the spotlight. All that pampering turned Roman into this selfish brat who only cared about himself. So no surprise, our relationship was basically non-existent. I was quiet and introverted, and Roman made it his job to bully me every chance he got. Imagine being bullied by your younger brother. That was my reality. Whether it was throwing tantrums that got my plans ruined or just snatching things I cared about, he always made sure I was miserable. Combine that with my biased parents, and you can start to picture what I went through. They were the reason Roman turned out like that. They spoiled him rotten while I was left to fend for myself. My birthdays were barely acknowledged. My accomplishments were ignored. I was just some filler character in the family drama. I remember once, in 3rd grade, I got straight A's. I was excited. I thought, maybe this time, they'll finally notice. But all my mom said was, "That's good," before gushing about some ridiculous drawing Roman did that she insisted we hang on the fridge. So yeah, Roman's crooked dog drawing got front and center, and my straight A report card? Straight into the junk drawer. That's how it always was. Roman was celebrated for every little thing, while I was constantly overlooked. But it didn't stop there. Roman decided where we went on vacations, what we ate, even what we watched on TV. Every time I tried to pick something, I got shot down and Roman made sure to rub it in. He was the king, and I was nothing. Can you blame me for wanting to get out of that place as fast as possible? I finally got my chance when I got accepted into one of the most prestigious colleges in the world on a scholarship. It was a dream. This college guaranteed a solid career path for its students. But of course, nothing I cared about could be mine without drama. The college was several states away, and just like always, my parents had to ruin it. Wanna guess why? Of course, it was Roman. My parents insisted I attend a local college instead. They claimed it was a better choice, but the truth? They were worried Roman would feel bad because he didn't get into a great school. Apparently, I had to give up my dream because Roman might feel insecure. I mean, what was stopping him? He could have worked hard too, but no. That logic didn't fly with my parents. All they cared about was keeping Roman from feeling less than. So they pushed hard for me to stay local. Somewhere deep down, I knew the real reason they didn't want me to outshine him. They probably knew I had potential, but chose to suppress it so Roman could keep his golden child crown. They didn't want me to succeed more than him. That wasn't part of their plan. But did I let their nonsense get to me? No way. I had already given up too much for their approval, and I was done. I told them I'd only stay at the local college. if they let me live in the dorms. They agreed, all too eagerly, thinking they'd won. But they didn't. Not even close. I packed up, took my scholarship, and left for the prestigious school. They still think I'm studying nearby. The greatest thing was that the renowned college I had gotten into offered the finance program I wanted in just 2 years, while the local college had the same course, but stretched over 4 years. This worked out perfectly because it meant I could finish earlier than my parents had expected. Honestly, it was the best choice I've ever made. Not only did I manage to leave the toxic environment my parents created, but this new college symbolized success in every way. I say this because shortly after graduation, I landed a 6-figure job, and I've been working there for a year now. Things are finally going well for me. I'm even close to getting a promotion. I made it all happen. The scholarship covered about 70% of my tuition, and I used the money my father had sent for the supposed local college fees to handle other expenses. Now life's actually good. My father continues to send me money thinking I'm still attending the local college, and I haven't corrected him. I know it's a little unethical, but I see it as compensation for the last 3 years. I've kept minimal contact with my family, just a few calls to check in and maybe 1 or 2 visits home during the holidays, just enough to avoid raising suspicions. Other than that, they haven't really disturbed me, and I've been able to stay distant under the excuse of being busy with studies. Honestly, it doesn't seem like they care much anyway. I mean, why would they? They already had their golden child. Now that the son they were reluctantly taking care of was no longer around, it seemed like a win-win situation for them. I was actually fine with this arrangement. Sure, it hurt sometimes that my parents didn't care enough to notice I had moved to a whole different state, but the pain was softened by the relief of not having their toxic energy around me. If I'm being real, though, I did miss having a family, not the broken one I had, but just the idea of a family that genuinely loved me. Even with all the friends and luxuries I now had, something still felt incomplete. But fixing it seemed out of the question until this morning. I received a call from my father. He said Roman was getting married and asked me to come home a few days before the wedding to help with the arrangements. I was stunned. Was my father seriously asking me to come back? I had longed for this moment for years, and when he said I was part of the family and wanted everyone present for Roman's big day, I got emotional. My parents had never acknowledged me as a true part of the family. It was always them and Roman. But now, my father specifically wanted me at the wedding. It was overwhelming, this sudden acknowledgement from them. But then again, I couldn't ignore that these were the same parents who had ignored me for most of my life. Even now, they had no clue I lived in another state. Did I really want to go back to the same people who never noticed me? This is where I'm stuck, in a dilemma. So, I'm asking you all, what would you do if you were me? I miss the feeling of having a family, and it would be nice for them to finally show me some care. But the idea of returning only to be disappointed again terrifies me. Should I go to my brother's wedding just to be part of the family for once, or should I stick to staying away and protect myself from getting hurt all over again? It's been 2 days since that call, and I've spent a lot of time thinking things through. In the end, I decided to protect my peace. Some of you might not agree, but I chose not to accept my father's invitation to Roman's wedding. And honestly, it feels like one of the best decisions I've made. Spoiler alert, my parents haven't changed, and they probably never will. Let me continue from where I left off in my original post. After thinking it over, I simply texted my dad and said I wouldn't be attending. No drawn-out explanation. No justifications, just the truth. I wasn't coming. I expected some backlash, but I didn't think the manipulation would come so fast. Within an hour, my phone was flooded with messages. My mom tried guilt-tripping me first. She asked if I really wanted to miss Roman's big day, if I wanted to be that kind of brother, and how disappointed Roman would be if I didn't show. She talked about how meaningful it would be for Roman to have his big brother there. Of course, she played the "you only get one family" card too. But here's the thing, Roman's big day meant nothing to me. He had never cared about any of my important moments, not once. And yeah, you only get one family, but only if they act like one. So I told her the same thing, I wasn't coming. When the guilt didn't work, my dad stepped in with his own twisted tactics. At first, he acted calm, saying things like how family should come together for important events. But when I didn't give in, he took a darker turn. He called me and said that if I didn't show up for Roman's wedding, they would stop paying my college tuition. He claimed they couldn't deal with the embarrassment of people whispering about how one of their sons didn't show up. Basically, it was all about appearances again, not about me, not about Roman, just about how the family looked to others. That's when I snapped. How selfish can people be? Threatening to cut off college funds just to make sure I showed up at a wedding? It was ridiculous, especially since I didn't care about the money anyway. So I told my dad, go ahead. Stop paying for college. I'm not coming to the wedding. Nothing you say or do will change my mind. I still haven't told them that I graduated a year ago and have been living in another state with a 6-figure job and a life they could never have given me. I'm not ready to tell them just yet. I know I'll have to eventually, and I will, but for now, I'm enjoying my freedom. The fact that I still refuse to go to the wedding even after his threats only made my dad angrier. He went on a whole rant about how ungrateful I was, how I had always been a pain, and how he was going to remove my name from the local college just to teach me a lesson. He made it sound like it was some grand punishment, as though taking me out of a school I had never even attended would completely wreck me. The irony was rich, and he had no clue how far from the truth that was. I honestly couldn't help but chuckle. I could have just told him I was never enrolled at the local college in the first place, but where's the fun in that, right? So now I'm just sitting here, waiting for my father to march over and try to remove my name from a school I was never part of. I'm genuinely looking forward to seeing his face when he figures out I don't need him or his money anymore. That's going to be quite the reality check for him. And knowing him, it won't be long before my phone rings with another batch of angry words. Honestly, I can't wait. Anyway, I'll keep you guys posted on how things unfold. Until then, see you around. Hey guys, it's Jonas again. I know it's only been like a day since my last update, but the drama in my life just reached a whole new level. After my previous post, I had a gut feeling my dad wasn't going to be cool with me refusing to go to Roman's wedding. Turns out I was spot on. It all kicked off with a call from him earlier today. And wow, he was raging. He didn't waste even a second before demanding to know where I'd been all this time and what I'd done with the money he'd been sending for my college expenses. It was like watching a toddler lose it over not getting his favorite toy, except this time, it was my father, completely unhinged over what had happened. Apparently, after our last conversation, he decided to head over to the local college. And this is where things get really juicy. He went there with the sole intention of pulling my name out of their system, just to teach me a lesson. The man seriously believed that cutting off my education would somehow make me change my mind and attend Roman's wedding. Wild, right? Naturally, he was in for the shock of his life. When he got to the college, they had no idea who he was talking about. There was no record of me being enrolled at all. I can only imagine the look on his face when he realized that. I mean, he really tried to cancel a non-existent enrollment. That must have hit him like a brick wall. And the embarrassment from that moment? Oh, it definitely showed in the way he was talking to me on the phone. He was fuming, demanding answers about where I'd been for the past 3 months and what I'd done with all the money. But the whole situation was so absurd, I couldn't help but laugh. After a bit more yelling on his end and some dodging on mine, I finally came clean. I told him I had actually graduated a year ago thanks to a scholarship and that the money he sent had still been useful. Then I hit him with the real shocker. I told him I was now earning a 6-figure salary, making more than he did. He sounded stunned and asked if I was joking, but deep down he knew I wasn't. The realization that I wasn't some struggling student anymore, but an independent man must have really stung. I knew what was coming next. The moment he processed everything I said, he lost it. He started accusing me of betrayal, ranting about how much he'd done for me only for me to hide all this from them. All that he'd done? Was he talking about the years he and my mom spent ignoring me to dote on their favorite child? Then he came up with possibly the dumbest idea ever. He said the only way he'd consider forgiving me was if I agreed to attend Roman's wedding and help avoid any drama or gossip about the family. Can you believe that? This man still only cared about appearances. I don't get why he's suddenly all about preserving the family image. It never seemed to matter to him before. Anyway, I told him I didn't need his forgiveness, and that I had zero interest in playing along with their charade of being one big happy family. Despite everything, he kept trying to talk me into coming to the wedding. He actually sounded desperate at that point. But I didn't budge. I told him there was no way I'd attend the wedding of the person who basically ruined my childhood. And not only that, I told him I was done with all the drama, I was cutting ties for good. He was shocked, but I didn't back down. I had stayed quiet my entire life, putting up with everything, but not anymore. I made it clear I didn't want any contact from them again. They could have their perfect son's wedding without me, while I moved on and lived my life. My dad tried one last emotional manipulation tactic, but it didn't work this time. There was a part 4, by the way. He tried to guilt trip me again, saying I was still his son and that I had to be there for my brother's wedding. But I'd had enough. I told him he clearly only ever had one son, the one they always prioritized, so he could stick with that. I was done. I didn't even let him say anything else. I ended the call and blocked his number. And that's where things stand now. I've officially cut myself off from my toxic family. It's a mix of emotions, really. I never wanted things to end like this, but I also know it was the right decision. At least now I can focus on living in peace. Maybe someday I'll even start my own family. So, it's been over a month since I cut them off. I thought that would be the end of it, no more manipulation, no more drama. But of course, they didn't let go that easily. Just a few days ago, I got this unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. I picked up, and to my surprise, it was my mother on the line, crying her eyes out. Since I'd blocked all their numbers, I was thrown off when the call came through. I didn't hang up right away, thinking maybe something serious had happened. But no, it was nothing like that. She started going on about how much she missed me, how she just wanted her son back, how none of the stuff between me and Dad mattered anymore, and how she wanted me to be part of the family again. It was confusing. Where was this energy when I first told them I was cutting them off? Back then, they didn't seem to care. And now all of a sudden, she wants to make amends? Suspicious, right? I ended the call, telling her I'd get back to her later. But something about the whole thing felt off. So I reached out to my aunt, my mom's sister, to see if she knew what was really going on. And wow, what she told me confirmed all my suspicions. Apparently, Roman's wedding had turned into a total disaster, an absolute train wreck. His so-called perfect fiancé turned out to be a full-on scam artist. Before the wedding even happened, she somehow managed to persuade Roman, my parents, and a bunch of relatives to pour all their savings into this so-called once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. And surprise, it turned out to be a scam. She took all the money and disappeared. There was no wedding, she vanished completely, and so did my family's entire savings. But even that wasn't the worst of it. My aunt later told me that my parents were in much deeper trouble than I ever imagined. Apparently, my dad had caused some kind of incident involving one of his employees and the employee's family, and it resulted in a major financial hit to his already crumbling business. That's when everything began to make sense. That's why he was so desperate to have me show up at the wedding. It wasn't about family or love, it was about saving face. He wanted to present this picture-perfect image of a united family to salvage his reputation and promote those so-called family values. But of course, that plan completely backfired. The whole mess with Roman and his fiancée only added more fuel to the fire, worsening the public image. So, in summary, they were hemorrhaging money from every direction. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, I found out they'd put the house up as collateral for a loan in an attempt to salvage the failing business. But naturally, that plan didn't work out either. It blew up in their faces, and now they're on the verge of losing their home too. They had to settle into some rundown trailer or cramped studio apartment because that was all they could afford now. Suddenly, everything made sense to me. My mom wasn't calling because she missed me or genuinely wanted to reconnect. She was calling out of desperation. They needed me. They knew I was doing okay on my own and now hoped to use me as their backup plan. I saw it clearly. They had no other options left, and I was their last resort. But I wasn't about to get pulled into their chaos again, not now that I saw the full picture. They never really cared about me, they were always too busy fussing over Roman and making sure his every need was met. But here's the twist, my parents were now even arguing with Roman, blaming him for everything, for the disaster at the wedding, for all the money they lost. The irony is hard to ignore. The so-called golden child they put on a pedestal turned out to be the one who ruined everything. And to be honest, I felt a bit of satisfaction watching them finally face the consequences of their choices. Anyway, I wanted no part in their drama. After that call from my mom, I blocked her again. I refused to let her manipulate me emotionally. But did that stop them from trying? Of course not. They were just being the desperate, clingy people who couldn't accept things not going the way they wanted. Before long, my parents actually showed up at my house. Don't even ask me how, they somehow got my address, probably by bothering some old acquaintances of mine. But the how doesn't really matter. What mattered was that they came knocking on my door, lecturing me about family values and trying to guilt-trip me about being their eldest son and therefore their supposed responsibility, and now, apparently, they were mine. I slammed the door in their faces. Naturally, they begged me to help, claiming they were broke and had used up the last of their savings just to fly out and see me. That's unfortunate for them, but I wasn't going to help. And the situation didn't even end there. A few days later, Roman showed up at my place too, actually crying, pleading for my help. He said he missed having his big brother around. What big brother? All I remember is him constantly tormenting me. I told him that, but he kept begging, saying Mom and Dad were threatening to cut him off soon because they were blaming him for everything that happened. It didn't change a thing. Roman got the same treatment as our parents. I shut the door in his face too and warned him that if any of them came back, I'd call the police. Since then, I haven't heard from any of them, and honestly, I'm fine with that. I've washed my hands of this toxic family. Sure, there's a little sadness that it all came to this. The emptiness they left behind will always exist somewhere in my life, but I'm not putting up with their nonsense anymore just because we share blood.